So Steve, welcome. This is being recorded. For those that have not been able to join in person, you are also now welcome to listen to what the three of us have to say. So just wanted to just basically introduce it by saying, well, we talked about this being 3 simple strategies to enable growth in 2021. When we first put out something about this session, because there were 3 of us, we each came up with a word. And that word, when you put them together, those were simple, realistic, and success. So that kind of made us think about, well, actually we've got 3 words. What 3 words? Ah, yes, there's this thing called what 3 words. And if anybody doesn't know what 3 words is, it is a way of being able to locate anything on the planet based on 3 words. So I know what you're all asking yourselves, and that is, where are the words of simple, realistic, and success? Well, they are in fact in Venezuela. So that is the answer to the most pressing question that you have had for the last 2.5 weeks. So there we are. So just a little bit of an intro there, but this is really about 3 of us providing some insight into growth for 2021, and each of us is going to talk through an area of expertise that we have. We'll talk about some of the key strategies that we think are right, and then we're each going to be pressed in true Desert Island Discs fashion. You're only allowed to keep 1 of the songs with you on the desert island. We're going to be asked to decide which of our children, which of our strategies we want to keep and offer you as the main suggestion for 2021. So this is all about simplicity. It's all about being realistic about what can be achieved in order that you're geared up to success. First off, I would like to introduce you to Jarmila. Jarmila, hello. Would you like to tell us a little bit about you? 30-second soundbite as to why people should listen to what you have to say about 2021.
Oh, thank you, Ralph. Quick sort of soundbite. Well, for 2021, no business can truly succeed without marketing. You'd expect me to say that because I'm a chief marketing officer. But without the right marketing, and that starts with strategy, you're not going to set yourself up for ultimate success. So from setting out your business vision and your business strategy and objectives, you will need to develop a marketing strategy. It need not be complicated though, simple is best. But you'll then need to translate that to a plan and ensure you've got great implementation of that. So I'm here today, and thanks for inviting me here, Ralph and Ian. I'm delighted to be here with 2 sales pros, showing that marketing and sales can work together. We need to. But I'm here today to share my insights and views from my 25-year career in marketing, sharing that experience that spanned startups, mid-size and blue chips, generating impact that's included launching companies, launching products, building pipeline, winning awards, raising investment, and also supporting successful business exits. Most recently, I've been recognised by business trade associations for my dedication to supporting business growth, especially in these troubling, challenging times of 2020. But also for my passion in promoting the professionalism of marketing and getting it into the boardroom. And that's what I'd like everybody to sort of think about, is to allow marketing into the boardroom, having it at that top table and making sure it's an essential cornerstone of your business strategy. So as I say, no business can succeed without the right marketing strategy. I've got lots of experience ensuring my clients get that marketing strategy in place. And critically, it's lovely to be here with sales on this panel because we understand how vital it is that sales and marketing work symbiotically together. We can't exist without each other.
So that's an interesting point. Thank you very much, Jarmila, for introducing yourself. There's often a tension between sales and marketing. There's been in the past this thing that salespeople are like, what does marketing do? We're the ones that are out, the heroes in the field. And there's marketing going, God, we generate all these leads and these amazing opportunities and events, and these salespeople don't follow up on them. So we could debate for a whole hour about just that point. And I think in some companies it really has come together extraordinarily well, which is excellent, and in others it hasn't. How would you define the purpose of marketing?
Really, really good question. And I'm delighted that you've mentioned the word purpose, because so much is needing to be purpose driven these days. Well, really, I think distilled to its essence, marketing is about attracting interest. It's that first step where a proficient sales team, and the emphasis there is on a proficient sales team, can then convert it into business. I mean, our focus today is on 2021. My view that the businesses that are going to succeed in 2021 will be thinking about their purpose, not just about their business mission, but the purpose that's at the heart of their business and their brand. And they're going to need to have what I call the attraction factor. And for those that will truly succeed, marketing's purpose is to help those businesses and those sales teams have an attraction factor that isn't limited to just the customer. Yeah, you've heard me right. It's not just about leads and the customer, because growth for businesses going forward can come from other areas as well. So ensuring that you line up your marketing, so your brand, your programs, your campaigns, so that they can appeal to more than just the customer, because you're going to need to attract customers, talent, so future staff, partners, potentially. You'll need strategic alliances and partners, investors to actually invest in the organization, and for those that are thinking exit, the all-important buyers, so getting on the radar of buyers. So those that will really succeed won't just nail that sort of customer attraction, but will also be looking at a couple of others as well. But it doesn't have to be adding complexity. Again, if you're being authentic, all of the stories, all of the stories around your brand will come true. So it won't be a forced thing. It'll be very, very natural. So you'll have different angles depending on the audience that you're speaking to.
Okay, so is it about simply doing more things, albeit that they're relatively simple and straightforward? Is marketing for 2021 about doing just more of it, or is there something more to it than that?
Well, some might expect me to say, yes, of course, you've got to do more marketing, do more marketing and layer on all these different things. There's all these new shiny new toys and tools and techniques and things that you can do. But actually, no, it's about, I think we've had a time to pause in 2020 and to reflect on, what's working, what should we be doing? And going into 21, it's as important, what should we stop doing, as what should we be doing? But you've kind of got to go back to your business strategy and think about actually what is our vision, what's our mission, what are we trying to achieve here, and then devise the right marketing strategy, and then focus on developing the right plan, and then flawless, excellent execution. So it's not about more, it's doing the right marketing, and that starts with strategy. We've seen lots of shifts over the years, and we've certainly seen a lot of shifts in 2020. So going into 21 and further into the 20s, we really do need to think very, very carefully about where we place our bets and how we should be marketing ourselves and our brands. And yes, it's about both things. And those businesses that will excel will be looking at showing themselves as being human, showing up as their personal brand as well as their corporate brand, and connecting those together.
That's really interesting because I see on LinkedIn, which is obviously a place where many of us are posting lots of things. It's a place where lots of people shout loudly about the stuff that they're up to. But there isn't actually that much engagement. When I look at it, most of the engagement I see on posts is from people who work in the company that's posted it, or people who are sort of friends. And yes, that propagates the message out there. So what you say about putting your own personal brand, I think is quite a key point, because the posts that I see that do the best are where people come across as being authentic human beings who happen to have a message as well, but they're not just a corporate mouthpiece. Have you seen that kind of a trend as well?
Absolutely. And it's been something that the real sort of savvy sellers out there who are truly doing social selling well have really crafted honed their skills and their techniques around this. Yes, there is a need to be on brand, and you'd expect me as a chief marketing officer, the ultimate custodian of a brand, to say this. Yes, you've got to be on brand and you've got to be on message, but you've got to personalize it. You've got to make it come to life, and you've got to make it come to life for the audience that you're talking to, so that it's relevant and it's timely for them. But you should be allowed to actually put it into your own voice as well. So absolutely, and it's apparent. You go onto LinkedIn and you look at the company profile pages and you see the posts that are being put out there, and you see a handful of likes and some interaction. But when an individual in an organization reposts that or shares that out to their community and adds on a bit of a personalized message around it, and then you get much more interaction and engagement around it. Absolutely. I mean, we want to deal with people. We don't want to deal with faceless brands. One of my soapbox moments is when I see websites that don't have team pages, that don't show you who's actually in charge of the organization. What is the leadership team? Who is that made up of? Who are the people that are heading up, say, customer services, etc., etc. Well, websites that simply don't have a picture of a human being on them, I think for too long, and this is a bit of an odd one because I've worked predominantly in my 25 plus year career in the technology space. We've run the risk recently of being very robotic, focusing in on the technology that's available to us and implementing the technology, but not really using it in a human to human way. So I think it's time to actually add the kindness and the humanity back into this. Yes, we can use the automation and the artificial intelligence and automated responses, but think about the words you're using on those places. So it's time to sort of personalize and get more personal with our marketing.
Okay, you have talked about the purpose and what is it that the company's attempting to do, because clearly if you just go out and push out a whole load of tactics without linking those back to what you're trying to do and why you're trying to do them, you're kind of doing random acts of marketing, and random acts of marketing are quite expensive in terms of money and also time and lost opportunity. So that all makes sense. So you define your purpose. You've then talked about the fact that there needs to be a strategy. You've talked about humanizing the message that you put across, which are all absolutely necessary, and that's something that you work with your clients on all the time. But if we're getting down to where the rubber hits the road right now, and I'm going to say to you, what is it that businesses need to do in 2021? What are the 3 suggested strategies, if you like, that you could articulate here, which if people did these 3 things, just these 3 things, it would make a material impact on their business growth for 2021?
Well, this 3 strategies for 2021, and again, emphasis on simple and keeping it simple, really relate back to 3 common problems that I see businesses and individuals making all the time. And they're common problems in that they have a low level of sales, they have a low level of inquiries, and they've got a low profile. So the 3 strategies that I would suggest in order to improve their profile so they can increase their level of inquiries and have better opportunities of increasing their level of sales is to, firstly, sharpen up their go-to-market strategy. So absolutely thinking about your brand, thinking about who your target audiences are, and think really, where should you be showing up? What should be in your go-to-market strategy? The second thing is optimizing your brand, because your brand, as I touched on earlier, is both your personal brand and it is your corporate brand. But how often do we truly optimize it? You mentioned about LinkedIn, and it's a key platform for anybody in B2B. how often do you go onto LinkedIn to you get a message from someone, you think, well, who is this that's contacting me to try and sell me whatever, you know, widget or device? You go on to look them up, and you think, oh, well, they don't come across as very credible. Why am I going to part with my hard-earned cash or my business's, you know, hard-earned money to you know, that it doesn't lend credibility to it. So optimizing personal and business brand is a key thing. And on the personal side, it doesn't cost you anything but your time to sit there and sort of work on your LinkedIn profile. And the third thing is implementing an integrated marketing campaign. It's absolutely crucial that people do think in an integrated way. It's not enough just to think, well, we've got the website and we've got a couple of other digital tactics. You need to think broader than that. And you also need to think about how you can add in some direct as well. Now, I'm not suggesting we go back to the days of old of lots of badly executed direct mail, but in the right instance, targeted high impact smart mail can make a huge difference to the engagement that you get and also the deal value. So that blend between offline and online, and especially as we come out of the COVID era, will become very, very important. But what I would say wrapping around all of that would be community and the sense of building community with those key audiences. So that's as a bonus fourth item.
A bonus fourth item. There you go. You're adding value every minute. So it's. I just want to pick up on one thing that you've just said there before we dive into talk to Ian. Just today, I got an email from somebody I didn't know, and it was another one of these emails that comes through on LinkedIn. I opened it up and I thought, oh, it's going to be another one of these things that clearly is just sort of, they're using duck soup, or they're using one of these automated LinkedIn, you know, emailers. Except that a personalized video came through where the person was actually talking to me. They had written a script for me about something which they thought they could help me with. So what did I do? I immediately went back and thanked them because they took the time to send something personalized. I had a great conversation with them. And I thought, you know what, that is a stroke of genius. Now, clearly that took that person, well, it would have taken them quite a long time. And if you're going to do that kind of thing for lots of potential customers, it's going to take you quite a lot of time. But, you know, to your point, something that is human, it's personal, but it's a direct outreach, the same way that other people are outreaching to you, but just done in a different way, made me sit back and go, that was good. And that literally, I mean, this wasn't even a setup. That actually came through this afternoon at about 3:30. So amazing. Thank you so much, Jarmila.
Definitely quality over quantity every single time. And, you know, it's so easy to hit the unsubscribe. So if you are getting, you know, really bad outreach, either from marketing or from sales, you know, it's so easy to hit unsubscribe, and then you've lost the opportunity to sell further into that account. Whereas, you know, that instance, that example you've given, you know, people will stay engaged, and you know, you've got more of a chance of buying and from them. So yeah, excellent.
Absolutely. Well, that's brilliant. Thank you for that. Now, if we turn to Ian, we're going to come a little bit further down from the purpose, the strategy, the top of funnel piece into the identification of opportunity to drive that demand that grows the business, and some of the ways that you can do that within an organization. So Ian, tell everybody who you are, why you're here, why we should listen and care about what you have to say before we dive into it.
So that's a bit of a reach. Thanks, Ralph. So I've spent the last 10 years or so working with technology companies, helping them build sales organizations, helping them work out how to build sales strategies, selling new things to new people, new buyers, new technologies. And across that time, I've worked with some of the biggest names that you can imagine and some of the tiniest startups, VC funded, out of the US. And I suppose I've seen the good, the bad, and the ugly of everything that you can possibly try in those markets to get you the edge that you need to be able to win.
Okay, well, brilliant. So you talk about the good, the bad, and the ugly. Can you just give us some examples? You know, don't name that you know, the ones that you don't want to, but do name the other ones that you might, just, you know.
I think it was really interesting because I took a bit of time to go back over it's about 70 or so businesses that I've worked with. And I took a bit of time to go back over that and actually look at what made the successful ones successful and the less successful ones less successful. And actually there was a common theme that ran through that, and it didn't really matter about size. So, you know, often you break businesses down into enterprise and into startups, but actually it really didn't matter, because if you were trying to sell something new or do something new, it usually is a smaller part of a large organization that's trying to do that. And the characteristics of that smaller part of the organization are actually often quite similar to a startup. Maybe they have a bit more funding, but often they have less funding. And actually the common thread is there a shared ambition through that business? So can you look to the top of the business all the way through, and can they clearly articulate where they're trying to get to, and how they're going to do that? And it's linked to the purpose that Jarmila was talking about, but it's probably a bit more time bound. So it might be the 12-month, 24-month horizon. And the best analogy I've heard described, the way to describe this is a bit like an old pirate ship or an old square rigger. And at the top of the mast, you have the lookout who is setting direction, knows exactly where they want to go. They can spot landfall and they can point it out, and they can tell you where to go. And then on the deck is the deck officer who's giving instructions to the rest of the crew, and in the bows of the ship are the rowers who are rowing as hard as they can. And the rowers rely on the deck officer to tell them where to go, and the deck officer relies on the person at the top of the mast to tell them, you know, give them oversight and direction, but there's some delegation. And more often than not, if it's a windy day or somebody's not listening properly, it gets lost. The direction gets lost between the top and where that deck officer is. And it's exactly the same. It pans out exactly the same way in many businesses. And obviously, if you're a large global business, you can be much further away from the person at the top who's setting the vision and the ambition. But equally, if I've worked with many startups where they might be US HQ'd with a small UK function. And again, that Atlantic gap is just cavernous. And there is either a lack of shared ambition, a lack of understanding about the different markets, and a lack of communication about the resources that's required to be able to execute the plan. And if you don't have that, you just set yourselves up for failure.
Okay. So if you've got that potential for confusion, potential for the message to be misaligned, how can an organization, and have you got any examples of this, how can an organization actually allow people further down, assuming it's a hierarchical top to bottom structure, but how can you allow other people who aren't on the management board to make decisions that are the right ones, that are aligned to where the strategy is trying to go?
And yeah, it's a good question. And actually it comes back to, funnily enough, keeping it simple, is that it's very easy to overcomplicate all of this stuff. But ultimately, businesses are out there to make money. I mean, there's lots of different things that sit around that, but ultimately your measure of success is how much money you make. And particularly in technology, it's a shareholder or an investor who wants to see a return on their investment. So that's your simple measure. How you go about doing that and how you deliver customer success to your customers is what kind of tends to differentiate you. What I've seen works really well is that if you set some simple, give everybody some simple filters or lenses through which to make some decisions. So we all know, I mean, this year has been a classic example. You have a plan, you get to March, it goes completely down the toilet and you have to adapt. Now, if you've got a business that is very structured and all instructions are driven from the top and there's very little delegated decision making, then they struggle in that kind of scenario. It becomes very hard to adapt. If you hire if you have a business where you structure it in a way where you give people those lenses, so I'll give you a simple example. So you've got a sales team or a customer success team, and you say to those individuals, right, when you make decisions about how you spend your time and what you do, you have to be able to see them through one of these. So one might be adding value to your customers, one might be making yourself better at what you do, and there might be another one that says helping your team be better at what they do or delivering value. But you keep it very clear and simple, and then allow people to make decisions about how best to spend their time. And when things go sideways, they then have some level of flexibility to make decisions to keep things moving forwards. And I find that if everybody has that and everybody understands what their 2 or 3 lenses are that they can make decisions through, you're much more likely to be able to adapt to whatever comes your direction.
Well, one of the things you talked about there was the various metrics which are used then to keep organizations on track to the ambition, which is linked to the purpose and the strategy. So a whole bunch of metrics, various scorecards, and things that get put in place. And my experience is that some metrics are there for the sake of metrics, because they can be measured, you just measure them. And others are actually far more strategic. And then there are some that you can't really define because they're just not very easy to measure. How have you experienced in the 70 odd companies that you've worked in, them setting metrics that they can measure appropriately?
Yeah, I think it's a really good question. And it's not only that you can measure, but that there's some purpose for having those metrics. So what are you going to do with that information? There's another saying that comes out all the time that says, there's no point in just weighing the pig. You have to feed the pig. If all you do is weigh the pig and then hire some more people to weigh the pig and some more people to weigh the pig, guess what? The pig's going to get thinner. So you've got to be clear about why you're measuring those things. And it can't be simply because somebody in sales operations has a job to measure things and therefore has come up with some things that they want to measure. So I would challenge you. I would challenge anybody who's got some of those metrics and say, well, what's your coaching intervention with that? So if that number isn't what you want it to be, what are you going to do next with your team, with yourself, with your organization to change that number? And if you don't have a clear plan or can't clearly articulate what it is that you would do, and you don't have to know the answer because we don't always know why things aren't working, but there is a point where you need to be able to, you need to intervene, you need to have an intervention and have thought through how you might go about doing that and when you might go about doing that. And that then naturally narrows down the number of things you're going to measure, because if you're measuring 100 things, there's no way you can genuinely measure 100 different things and have a plan for how you're going to intervene if any one of those things goes off track. So I think measure less things, identify the things that are genuinely important to your buyer's buying cycle rather than your selling cycle, because ultimately the buyers really, what they do is more important than whether somebody's sent a proposal out or done a demo. I mean, no one really cares. Buyer doesn't care. And then have some interventions that allow you to step in at those key points to be able to do whatever you need to do to get your pipeline back on track or your deals back on track. It sounds simple, doesn't it? It's never quite as easy as that, but you've got to start from somewhere where it is simple.
Yeah, it isn't as simple as that, is it? Because it's a little bit like saying just have a few metrics, which are the ones that are really powerful, that are going to make a difference. And so anybody's then going to go, all right, Ian, what are those metrics? And of course it depends what the company is, what the context, what the stage they're at, etc. But presumably that is something that you talk to the companies you work with and actually help them to define.
Mm-hmm. So I remember.
Okay, so
I'll just give you one example, a real world example where I stood in running a workshop with a customer who was telling me about they use Miller Hyman as a sales methodology, and they were running through how this all works and how wonderful it was. And I was like, okay, great. So what do you do if that's not, if it's not got the right number on it, what do you do? Well, we don't really use it for coaching. We just use it for whatever. Well, that's totally pointless then, isn't it? Is it a wonder that your salespeople don't fill it in? Because they get no value out of filling that in. So it's pointless exercise. There has to be value from both sides. Yeah. Otherwise, no one's going to do it. They just do it it just gets done as an admin task. It's a waste of time. It's a very expensive admin person, your salesperson.
Yeah, and the more stuff you ask people to do that adds no value to them, the less inclined they're going to be to do it in the future. And then you get that inevitable tension between sales management and the sellers themselves, because they are just actually not aligned around the same common requirements.
And I'd probably go back to then, what's your ambition? Are you aligned? Is that clearly communicated? Are you clear about what the lenses are that they measure themselves by and how they make their decisions? And actually then it becomes easier to pick your metrics.
Okay, excellent. So if I ask you the same question that I asked Jarmila,
Yeah.
because you talked about quite a number of things there. So getting, the rubber hitting the road again, it's planning now for the next 30 days before we get to January the 1st. What are the 3 things that you would suggest that people focus on for 2021 growth?
Well, it won't be a surprise that my top one is make sure you have an ambition that's clearly shared, and it's got to be right sized. Okay, so there's no point in having it completely ridiculous. Not everyone is a Steve Jobs who can operate a reality distortion field. You've got to have some ambition there. But it's got to be aligned to the resources and the people that you have. So I think that's number one. Have some simple milestones. So the break it up a little bit. So those having said don't have too many KPIs, have some simple milestones that everybody can work towards, and so you can see whether you are on track. And then trust your team to be able to deliver against that. If you set the environment up correctly, give them some space to fail, because that will, people get stuff wrong, but people have to do that to grow, but be there to make sure that you can coach and support them back into the place that they need to be successful. And if you do that, you're much more likely to be successful.
Okay, excellent. Well, thank you for that. So I think so far on our journey, we've gone from making sure you define your purpose, that there's a clear strategy, that you are executing the strategy with the human touch through all the marketing activity that you do, which is coming top of funnel, percolating down, aligning the organization around a clarity of ambition, making sure the right KPIs are set, that everybody is aligned around those, make sure that you've got some milestones. And that also, I think, Ian, speaks to what Jarmila was talking about in terms of a sense of community, because that is ultimately what a company is. It's a community of people that have got a shared goal, shared ambition, and a shared purpose. And so that is effectively where we are to this point. So
yeah, I guess it's time to turn the tables on you, Ralph. And I think we've
no.
Yeah,
I wasn't expecting that.
that we've covered this bit so far, and the bit that I nearly morphed into and then didn't is the people bit. So obviously we talked about brand and purpose and ambition and structure and creating the environment for success. But I think certainly that one of the most critical, if not the most critical thing, is making sure you have the people in your business who can help you drive that forwards. And I know that this is a particular passion of yours, so really interested to hear your view on how you build those successful sales teams.
Okay, well, shall I just give you a 30-second as to who I am? I realise
yes, I haven't done that, have I? No.
Well, and I should have done it up front. So it's kind of like, who the hell's this guy that's talking and grilling Jarmila and Ian? So I have been around the block for a while, sort of 25 plus years running sales and marketing and strategy and alliance teams, mostly in technology, in some AI companies, through startups, and also in corporates, global roles, national roles, etc. And have seen quite a lot of things that work really well and an awful lot of things that don't work at all. And some of those were initiatives that I put in place and then they bombed, and that's fine. You learn from those and then you put other initiatives in place and then they work. So I've got quite a lot of experience of both sides of that coin. And one of the key things that I now do is I help individuals and I help sales and marketing teams and people to accelerate their performance. That's through coaching. It's through things like Salesforce and sales candidate assessments. It's through actually implementing an entire sales process and team for companies. But it's all very much focused towards getting the sales engine right and on the people that make that work. So that's my 30 seconds, Ian.
Cool. Oh, so now I can ask you my good question, which is, if you'd like to share a bit of your I know that the people bit is your passion, and that you've done it in that, and obviously it's the critical bit that we've not fitted into the puzzle yet, is how do you get those great people on board, and what do you do with them when they're in there?
Yeah, and I think it's important to say that while I focus on salespeople and marketing people, those are only a couple of teams within an organization. And so by not talking about them, I don't seek to diminish their worth or the need for them or the amazing stuff that they do. You can sell as much as you like, but if you haven't got a customer service team or an operations team or product people developing, you don't have a business. So that and all of those teams are critical, but my focus is around salespeople. So if we continue the kind of marketing theme and then through aligning with the KPIs and then down to the people themselves, what I would ask is, and I always ask this of the founders of tech startups or the SVPs of sales, how many of your people, how many of your sales team are being successful? How many of them are on their number? And they'll say to me, oh, well, look at my spreadsheet. I've got KPIs that say that these 15 people are under their number by quite a lot. These people are sort of a little bit under, but they can probably pull it back. And here are the high flyers. And then I say, so why are those 15 people under the line? Well, they're just not selling enough. Well, no, that's what the data tells us, but why? Not sure. Okay, so why are the people that are selling really well selling really well? And they go, well, they always sell really well. Okay, but why? Don't know. Now, the reality is you can have an amazing amount of stuff that comes in top of funnel. You can have great opportunities. The company does a brilliant job at putting its message out there, at evangelizing, and then they come through into the funnel. But ultimately, it'll be the sales team that pushes those through to closure or not. And so having a sales team that is the best functioning team in the organization is critical to your success as an organization. So it's the first thing I would always do is look at assessing the sales team to understand what drives them, how they operate, what are the things that they do which are actually sort of part of sales DNA. Sales DNA is a really important thing because there are certain elements of being a salesperson that you can coach, right? So you can coach competencies around qualification or presentation skills or how to close deals, those sorts of things. But there are sales DNA elements which basically aren't coachable, right? Here's an example. You've got some people that are really good at controlling their emotions, and you've got other people that aren't. If you're a sort of person who can't control their emotions, you're probably not best suited to being a new business development person, because you're more likely to find it a challenge to reconcile this issue of not knowing when or whether things will close, that sort of uncertainty, than somebody who's an account manager who's got a relationship, who's building a relationship. So that's an example of a DNA aspect. You'll find that some people are really good at handling rejection and others aren't. Again, it's not a coachable thing. You can talk about it, you can sort of reconcile, and think what does a rejection mean and how can you deal with it? When I was much younger, I used to sell perfumes door to door. So I would carry my man bag over my shoulder with lots of bottles of perfume in, and I'd walk up and I'd knock on the door and I'd go, oh, hello, do you like to smell nice, sir? Oh, you would, sir. Oh, very good. Let me spray you with this, sir. And they'd kind of go, oh, that smells quite nice. And I go, oh, brilliant. Would you like a bottle, sir? And they kind of like, not sure, actually, no. Off you go. And it's like, oh, okay. It's like I've spent 20 minutes just doing my best perfume sales job ever, and I've just been rejected. Now I sold some and I really enjoyed it, and I used to go home smelling amazing, but it wasn't for me ultimately, because I'm not brilliant at handling rejection, right? So that's why you should never put me as a new business hunter. I never was. I was never good at that. But put me as an account manager or an account director, and I'll build an amazing relationship with my customer, right? So that's an example of a DNA. You can't really train it. You can't teach it. People are either, like that or they're not. So understanding your sales team, who's playing in what position, and understanding then what are the coachable elements that you can train, the sales competencies, is a critical thing to do. Because if you've got somebody in the wrong place, if you've got me, for example, you put me in a business development role, you're not going to get as much out of me as if you put maybe Ian in a business development role, right? Who knows how to do that and that. But if Ian was an account manager, maybe he wouldn't be getting as much out of a customer as I would be. So we could be in the wrong place. Both of us are under that line. We're part of that 15 in your sales team that are underperforming. And you could look at us both and you could go, do you know what? You're not performing. I'm going to get rid of you and I'm going to hire other people in. Whereas actually, if you did a full assessment, you would then understand, well, actually, Ian's better suited to new business, Ralph's better suited to account management. Let's swap them over. And then all of a sudden, we're no longer part of the 15. We're flying because we're doing the things that suit us. So, sorry, a long answer to, making sure that you really focus on what the strengths of your people are to get the best out of them and for your company.
What do you do then when you've worked that out? Or what happens when you, so go back a bit, in fact, so I want to ask a different question. If you go back a bit and you say, so you know what the strengths are that you have, are you planning in? So are you doing some planning at the front end that says, we need some people that look like this and we need some people that look like this? You've almost, do you start again with a clean sheet of paper and say, oh, I want these roles, let's see what we've got? Or do you see what you've got, see where you can fit them? And then how do you actually approach when you get into that scenario?
Well, it's a little bit of both. So, if you have done the work of understanding what your purpose is, defining what your ambition is, looking at the way that you're trying to drive your organization and how you're trying to, drive it, you should have, or you will come up with a very clear view about, how many hunters, how many farmers, how many customer service reps you need, etc. And so you shape the team. You can then look at your current sales organization and see, does it fit? I can then look at the assessment of each individual and go, right, we've got the people and we can fit them into the roles that they're in. And maybe they're in the right roles. It's just that some of them have got sales competencies which could be coached, in which case you put a coaching program around them. You actually upskill, you train them so that they become better at closing or qualifying or pipeline management or all of those sorts of things. If, as I said before, if the DNA just isn't right, then you probably want to work out where you put them in order to make sure that they're going to flourish. I would also make sure that I've got a hiring plan. And let me ask you this, Ian, you've done this a lot, and I know, Jarmila, you've hired people in marketing. Have you ever done a full assessment of a salesperson's sales DNA, their will to sell, and their sales competencies as part of the interview process?
Well, I think so. I might have a slightly, I think we did a pretty good job of that in my past life. We probably didn't do, but we looked at, but I would say we were outliers in this, and that we were looking at values and motivations. So that is kind of your values are like your DNA. I suspect that's kind of what you're talking about, isn't it? And we built those out. What we didn't do was put anybody through any experience some activities to see whether actually they could do it or not. But I think we had a reasonably high propensity of success rate by doing that level of assessment. And actually we did that because to ensure that we got a retention rate in the business that made us successful. So we couldn't live with the churn rate that we had in junior salespeople. And it was make sure that we assess effectively and get the right people in. Made it harder because it narrowed the pool significantly. We got a retention rate from about 60 to 70% year one retention rate up to about 85 to 90% year one retention rate by putting that level of sophistication in.
And that is the critical point, right? So you have used an assessment, like a formalized assessment, to reduce the risk of the wrong hire, and therefore to reduce the churn rate. And you know, the recruitment model is an interesting model. They make money by putting people into your organization. They don't mind whether those people fail or succeed beyond the period where they collect their fee. right? So if they fail, well, then they get the opportunity to sell in again. It's their business model, right? So they don't like these assessments because they want to be able to churn more people through the business. But that costs the business money, like a lot of money. It costs for lost opportunity, and it costs for morale, and it costs because customers see not just one account manager, but then they see another one and then another one because people have churned through and they've not been successful. So if you go through a process where you have a really rigorous assessment as part of the interview process, you may actually find that you spend less time interviewing because you've actually gone through that process before candidates get put forward to you. When you look at hiring them, you know what their sales DNA is, which is a much bigger predictor of whether they're going to be good at selling for you than the fact that they've spent 10 years at a company that looked and felt a bit similar to you. But actually, to be honest, the stock market, you're always given a warning. Past performance is no predictor of future gain or benefit. And it's the same when you're recruiting people. But if you go through an assessment, you understand all of that. So I guess my message is really know your sales team so that they're in the right place, and then have a plan about how to hire when you're growing, or how to hire to backfill those that you may decide aren't right for your organization or who naturally decide they want to move on. Because if you don't have an engine that is truly firing on all cylinders, you're leaving money on the table. And all the good work that's been done from a marketing point of view, and then from an alignment perspective within the organization, can be diminished significantly because you haven't got the right people doing the right jobs at the right time in the right way that suit them and suit your organization.
So have you got a couple, can you give us three of that out of all of that? So we've covered the science, the coaching, the making sure that you do the assessment piece, understand the DNA, really understand what you need to be able to do those roles. So the criteria that you need in each of those different roles, or a whole range of different topics in there. Could you pick three that you think are the top three things that you need to make sure?
Yes, so I would say first thing is define what your sales organization is going to look like, needs to look like, based on who you want to be, who you are as an organization, what your ambition is. The second thing is then make it a plan, make it a priority in Q1 2021 to know your sales team like you've never known them before, right? Because only once you know them as individuals can you then do the third thing, which is to put a coaching program around them, to know who to upskill when on what topic, not just a generic training that you send everybody through that wastes half the people's time because it's just a bit of a refresher and they mostly do that anyway, or it just falls on deaf ears, but something that is really tailored to the individual. Because if you do that, if you just make a sort of 2 or 3% gain on each of the 21 core sales competence areas, compound those, and all of it, and you compound them not just for the individual, but you compound them for the individual and then across the entire sales team. And then all of a sudden you've got more pipeline coming through, you've got more opportunities being closed, you've got happier customers, you've got happier salespeople because they're earning more. So those are my three things. Know what your shape of your sales team should be, know your people, put in place a plan for each of your people as individuals.
Oh, thank you. Good coverage. So do we need to though pick our top three then? So out of all of that, if we're going to narrow down into our top three, we all have to pick one thing that we have to do next year, or to keep it simple, what do we think we're going to do? Jarmila, what would you pick?
Right, so out of my three children, let's call them, of go-to-market strategy, brand optimization, and integrated campaign, I would say that you got to start with the basics. You got to start with brand and ensure that brand is ship shape for the future and for what you need to do. and that it aligns to your customers and where they're at for the right time period. And there have been so many shifts. So I would say brand optimization. And it's especially important because if you can get that bit right, you can use your people, provided you've hired the right ones into the right roles and all of that good stuff. Love that all, Ralph. That was fantastic. I'll speak to you after class about the perfumes. Is coming up to Christmas. You can really make your marketing. You can make your marketing budget, your investment into your business go so much further by actually getting your people to be your brand ambassadors, and that costs you nothing. But aligning your people around your brand so they really re-engage and reconnect with the business and the purpose, the mission, vision, values, all that great stuff. That is the number one thing that you can do before you then start to layer on campaigns and the rest. So I would pick, if I had one desert island disc for marketing, it would be brand.
Cool. Ian, shall I answer for you as well?
Well, yes, you can give me yours as well, Ralph. Go on then.
Okay.
Mine.
I would say know your people, like know them really well, really understand their capabilities, and put that plan around each one of them. So yeah, that would be my call to action for urgency at the beginning of 2021.
Ian, what would be yours?
Well, I was going to say, I would add into that, I think it has to be, make sure that you have your ambition nailed and that it is shared and communicated through the organization. And then if you've got those three, then I think you've got your brand, you've got your shared ambition that is clearly understood by everybody, and everybody knows their role in that. And then you've got the right people, and you know your people, you've got your people in the right place, and you've got a plan for them, then surely you've got to be flying. That has got, I might have a visitor in a second. So surely that has got to be the simple way that you nail your 2021.
So we might need to reprogram the 3 words app and see where brand, people, ambition takes us. It might be somewhere other than Venezuela, maybe, Ralph. Who knows?
It might be. It might be indeed. Well, it definitely will be. But yeah, we can have a look at that. So what was that? People, brand, and ambition.
People, and ambition. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Well, there you go. That's homework for everybody tonight. Get on to what 3 words?